My own daughter-in-law looked me in the eyes and said, "You're nothing but a burden now. You should move out." And my son? He just nodded, agreeing with her, as if I were no more than an old piece of furniture taking up space. I had given them everything I could, my time, my money, my love, and in return, they wanted me gone. But what they didn't know was that I held in my hands a secret that would change everything. A single piece of paper worth $53 million. And when they tried to take it from me, I showed them just how much strength a so-called useless old woman could have. Friends, if you've ever felt dismissed, used, or betrayed by the very people you thought would stand by you in your later years, this story will hit close to home. Because it isn't just about money. It's about dignity. It's about being seen, being valued, and standing up for yourself when no one else will. Too many of us, especially as we age, are treated as though our worth has an expiration date. But what happens when the tables turn? What happens when the woman they thought was powerless suddenly holds all the power? Before I dive deeper into this story, let me ask you a quick favor. If you believe that no parent should ever be treated as disposable, if you believe that family should mean respect and not exploitation, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps this community grow, and it tells the world that our voices, your voice, still matter. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing the places these stories reach, and it reminds me that we're all connected through shared struggles and triumphs, no matter how far apart we may be. Now, let me take you into the life of Dorothy Williams, a 67-year-old widow who had already endured one of life's hardest blows, the death of her husband, only to face betrayal from the very child she had raised. This wasn't just a family disagreement. This wasn't just about clashing personalities under one roof. This was about power, greed, and the quiet, cutting cruelty that sometimes hides behind a smile. Dorothy had lost her partner, her home, and the stability she had counted on. But instead of being embraced by her son Marcus and his wife Ashley, she found herself being used as a live-in servant. Imagine this: you've spent your whole life building a family, sacrificing your dreams and your energy to give them everything, and then, when you're most vulnerable, the people you love turn around and treat you like an inconvenience. Dorothy was paying her son and daughter-in-law $15,000 a year just to stay in their home. On top of that, she was cooking, cleaning, folding laundry, and spending over 1,200 hours each year taking care of her grandchildren. But instead of gratitude, she received contempt. Ashley whispered insults loud enough for her to hear. Marcus avoided her eyes when she asked for a little understanding. And all the while, Dorothy swallowed her pain, holding on to one tiny ritual that gave her hope, buying a lottery ticket every single week, using the same set of numbers she had played faithfully for 32 years. Numbers tied to anniversaries, birthdays, and moments of love she refused to let go of. It was that small ritual, that spark of hope she clung to, that would soon become her lifeline. Because on the very day her daughter-in-law demanded she pack her things and leave, fate handed Dorothy something extraordinary. She scratched off the ticket, her hands trembling, her heart pounding. And when she realized she was holding a winning ticket worth $53 million, she didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply sat there in stunned silence, realizing that God, or destiny, or maybe her late husband looking down, had just given her the chance to rewrite her story. But here's the thing about sudden fortune: it doesn't erase old wounds, and it doesn't magically turn cruel people into kind ones. No, what it does is reveal who they really are. When Ashley found out about the ticket, her eyes lit up with greed. Marcus, weak and wavering, tried to convince his mother that it was family money, that they would take care of it for her. But Dorothy wasn't about to let the very people who had demeaned her control the blessing that had been placed in her hands. For the first time in years, she felt the ground beneath her feet. She felt her backbone straighten. And she knew, this wasn't just about winning the lottery. This was about winning back her life. And so begins Dorothy's fight. A fight not only for her fortune, but for her dignity, her peace, and the simple respect she should have had all along. What happened next would shock her children, stir her community, and remind anyone watching that it is never too late to stand up for yourself. When Dorothy realized the weight of what she was holding, a ticket that could shift the course of her life, her first instinct wasn't to run or to scream in triumph. Instead, she folded it carefully, as though it were made of glass, and tucked it deep into the pocket of her worn cardigan. She knew right away that this was something she had to protect, because if Ashley or Marcus found out before she was ready, they would strip it from her hands just like they had tried to strip her of everything else. That night, as the house quieted down and she lay awake listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the creaks of old wood in the hallway, Dorothy thought about her late husband, Richard. For 38 years, they had built a life together, modest but filled with love. He had always promised her that one day, they'd retire near the lake where they'd spent their honeymoon. They dreamed of simple mornings with coffee on the porch, afternoons with books, evenings with laughter. But when Richard passed away suddenly, that dream had died with him, or so she thought. Now, clutching the thought of this ticket, she could almost feel his presence whispering, "Dorothy, don't let them break you. This is your chance." The next morning, however, Dorothy's fragile hope was tested. As she sat at the kitchen table buttering toast for her grandchildren, Ashley walked in, her voice sharp as ever. "Dorothy, you really need to start pulling your weight more around here. I don't know what you think this is, but you're not a guest. You're practically living here for free." Dorothy almost laughed. Free? She thought of the $15,000 she handed over every year, money scraped from her dwindling savings. She thought of the piles of laundry she folded, the floors she scrubbed until her knees ached, the countless nights she rocked crying children back to sleep so Marcus and Ashley could rest. But instead of answering, she bit her tongue. She had learned long ago that fighting Ashley head-on was like shouting into the wind. Still, Ashley's words stung, and later that day, when Marcus returned from work, Dorothy pulled him aside. She wanted to believe that somewhere inside her son was the boy she had raised, the boy who once held her hand when crossing the street, who had cried in her lap when his dog died. "Marcus," she said softly, "I don't know how much longer I can stay here like this. Your wife, she doesn't want me around." Marcus sighed, rubbing the back of his neck, eyes darting to the floor. "Mom, Ashley's under a lot of stress. You know how she gets. Maybe if you—" "I don't know, just give her space?" Dorothy's chest tightened. "I'm giving her everything. Do you not see it?" But Marcus didn't answer. His silence told her all she needed to know. He had chosen his side, and it wasn't hers. It was in that moment Dorothy's resolve hardened. The ticket wasn't just a chance at money. It was her escape. It was freedom from the suffocating walls of that house, from Ashley's sharp tongue, from Marcus's cowardice. It was her way back to dignity. 2 days later, Dorothy made the trip into town. She wore her plainest clothes, slipped on an old pair of sneakers, and kept her head low as she entered the convenience store. The clerk recognized her, smiling. "Dorothy! Back for your lucky numbers again?" Dorothy managed a small smile. "Yes, but today I'm here for something else." Her hands trembled as she slid the winning ticket across the counter. The clerk's eyes widened, then darted toward the machine. The noise of the scanner beeped, and a message flashed on the screen. Dorothy held her breath until the clerk whispered, "Congratulations. This is life-changing." Dorothy forced herself to remain calm. "Please, don't tell anyone," she said firmly. "Not a word." On the drive home, she kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see Ashley's car following her, suspicion written all over her face. When she arrived, she hid the confirmation slip inside a hollowed-out Bible on her nightstand, a book Ashley had never so much as touched. And for the first time in years, Dorothy felt a sense of control. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. A week later, Ashley overheard a conversation Dorothy had with the bank over the phone. It wasn't explicit, but it was enough to raise suspicion. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Ashley leaned forward, her eyes narrow. "So, Dorothy, been making any big investments lately? You seem distracted." Dorothy kept her fork steady, even as her heart raced. "Just paying bills, same as always." But Ashley wasn't convinced. Later that night, Dorothy heard hushed whispers outside her bedroom door. Ashley's voice was sharp, urgent. "I swear she's hiding something, Marcus. I think she's sitting on money. A lot of it." Marcus's reply was muffled, but Dorothy caught enough. "Even if she is, it's ours too. She wouldn't have anything if it weren't for us." Those words cut deeper than any insult Ashley had ever thrown. "Ours too?" Dorothy thought. "No, Marcus. This was never yours. You gave me nothing but disappointment, and you think you're entitled to my blessing?" Dorothy knew then that the days of quiet endurance were over. She could no longer remain a shadow in her own story. With her fortune secure and her strength renewed, she began to plan her next move. A move that would not only free her from that house, but remind her ungrateful family of a truth they had long forgotten: she was not a burden. She was their foundation. And she was about to show them just how much power a mother could hold when pushed too far. Dorothy spent the next few nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, every nerve in her body humming. She replayed Marcus's words in her mind: "Even if she is, it's ours too." The entitlement, the betrayal, the coldness of it all. This was her son. The boy she had carried in her womb, whose fever she had soothed through endless nights, whose education she had scraped pennies to provide. And now, here he was, plotting with his wife to take from her what little she had earned, what destiny itself had granted her in her twilight years. It was almost too much to bear. But Dorothy was not the fragile, defeated woman Ashley wanted her to be. She still had fire in her veins, and Richard's voice in her memory telling her to stand tall. The next morning, Dorothy tested the waters. She made pancakes for the grandchildren, humming softly as she worked. When Ashley wandered in, suspicious eyes narrowing at Dorothy's cheerful tone, Dorothy met her gaze with a calm, almost unsettling smile. For once, Ashley was the one unsettled. Dorothy noticed the flicker of doubt in her daughter-in-law's face, and it gave her strength. Later that day, Dorothy visited the bank again, but this time she requested something different: a quiet consultation about property. The banker, a man in his 50s with kind eyes, leaned forward as Dorothy explained. "I want to purchase a home," she said. "Something small, nothing flashy, but mine. And I don't want my family knowing until everything is settled." The banker nodded with understanding. "You'd be surprised how often I hear that, Mrs. Willis. You're not alone." That sentence struck Dorothy deeply. You're not alone. For months, she had felt like a ghost in her own home, invisible, unheard. To hear someone acknowledge her plight with empathy, it reminded her she was still a person worth caring about. When she left the bank that day, Dorothy carried a folder under her arm, listings of modest houses in a quiet neighborhood not far from the lake she and Richard had always dreamed of. Her chest tightened with emotion as she pictured herself there, sipping tea on the porch in the early morning light, surrounded not by scorn, but by peace. But she couldn't move too quickly. Ashley was watching her like a hawk, and Marcus's loyalty was paper-thin. One wrong move, and they would demand answers. Dorothy had to play the part of the weary, compliant mother-in-law for just a while longer, while carefully weaving the threads of her plan. Then came the confrontation. One evening, Ashley cornered her in the kitchen, voice dripping with accusation. "Dorothy, I know you're hiding something. You've been sneaking out, making phone calls, acting all secretive. You think I'm stupid? Whatever it is, it belongs to this family." Dorothy's hands tightened around the dish towel she was holding. For a split second, she considered blurting the truth, slamming it down like a weapon and watching Ashley's smugness crumble. But she swallowed the impulse. No, not yet. Instead, she gave Ashley a look so steady it made the younger woman falter. "Ashley," she said softly, "if there's something you think I'm hiding, maybe you should ask yourself why it matters so much to you." Ashley blinked, thrown off balance. For once, Dorothy had given her nothing to sink her claws into, and it infuriated her. She stormed off without another word, but Dorothy knew the storm was far from over. That night, Marcus came to her room. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, the way he used to as a teenager when he wanted something but was too ashamed to ask. "Mom," he began, "she's just worried. You've been acting strange. If there's something going on, you can tell me." Dorothy looked at him, her heart breaking all over again. This was her son, the child she had once believed would protect her in old age, not stand beside the woman tearing her down. But she also saw the weakness in him, the way he leaned on Ashley to think for him, to speak for him. He wasn't her Richard. He wasn't strong. "Marcus," she said carefully, "the only thing going on is that I'm tired. Tired of being treated like a stranger in my own family." He shifted uncomfortably, unable to meet her eyes. "That's not fair, Mom." Dorothy smiled bitterly. "No, Marcus. What's not fair is watching the boy I raised become a man who lets his wife decide that his mother is disposable." The words hung heavy in the air, and Marcus left without replying. Dorothy sat in the quiet afterward, tears stinging her eyes. But she didn't regret saying it. Some truths needed to be spoken, even if they fell on deaf ears. The following week, Dorothy signed the papers on a small two-bedroom house near the lake. She arranged everything quietly, using a lawyer recommended by the banker, someone discreet. The house wasn't extravagant, but it was hers. Her name, her deed, her independence. The day she received the keys, Dorothy drove out to see it alone. She walked slowly through the empty rooms, her footsteps echoing on the bare floors. In the living room, she paused, closed her eyes, and whispered, "We made it, Richard. We finally made it." She allowed herself one evening of quiet joy before reality came crashing back. When she returned to Marcus and Ashley's house, the tension was worse than ever. Ashley's eyes followed her every move. Marcus barely spoke. The air felt charged, dangerous, as though they both sensed something slipping out of their control. And Dorothy, calm and steady, carried her secret like a shield. It didn't take long for Ashley to notice the shift. Dorothy moved differently now, lighter, calmer, as though some invisible weight had been lifted from her shoulders. It unnerved Ashley. She had built her sense of power on Dorothy's silence, her timidity, her reliance on Marcus. But this new steadiness, this quiet confidence, felt dangerous. Ashley tried to probe, but Dorothy gave her nothing. No defensive outbursts, no trembling excuses. Just a serene smile and a measured tone that made Ashley feel like she was the one being judged. It drove her mad. So Ashley escalated. One Saturday morning, while Dorothy was preparing breakfast for the children, Ashley slammed her hand on the counter. "I'm not going to live like this anymore. This house isn't big enough for all of us, and your presence is smothering me." "Marcus, tell her." Marcus appeared in the doorway, hair mussed, looking caught between two storms. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Maybe Ashley's right, Mom. Maybe it would be better if you found a new place. You'd have more privacy, more peace." Dorothy set down the spatula, wiped her hands on a towel, and looked her son straight in the eyes. Her voice didn't tremble. "Marcus, you and Ashley have already decided how you feel about me. But let me be very clear, I will not be pushed into the street like garbage. If I leave, it will be on my own terms." Ashley scoffed, crossing her arms. "And what terms are those? Because last I checked, you don't have the money to live on your own. You depend on us." Dorothy smiled faintly. "That's what you think." The silence that followed was sharp as glass. Ashley narrowed her eyes, suspicion igniting into panic. Marcus looked confused, shifting his weight uncomfortably. Dorothy turned back to the stove, humming softly, as though nothing more needed to be said. That afternoon, Ashley ransacked Dorothy's room while she was out in the garden. Drawers yanked open, papers scattered, jewelry boxes turned upside down. She found nothing, because Dorothy had already moved anything important to the new house. When Dorothy returned and saw the mess, she didn't confront Ashley directly. She simply cleaned up, humming the same tune, her composure unshaken. The quiet dignity was worse than any argument. But the cracks in Ashley's confidence were beginning to show. That evening, she cornered Marcus. "She's hiding something, I know it. Did you see the way she looked at me this morning? Smug, like she's already one step ahead of us. You need to get her to tell you what's going on." Marcus groaned. "Ashley, please. She's my mom. Maybe she's just, I don't know, trying to live her life." "Her life?" Ashley snapped. "Our kids are the future. We're the ones who need stability. Whatever she has, it belongs to this family. To us. And if you don't get it, Marcus, maybe you're not the man I thought you were." The words landed like a knife. Marcus flinched, torn between the woman he had married and the mother who had raised him. In the end, as always, he chose silence. Days later, Dorothy finally made her move. She packed 2 suitcases quietly and told Marcus and Ashley she would be staying with a friend for a while. "I think it's best for all of us," she said, her tone so calm it disarmed them. Ashley smirked, triumphant. "Finally. I knew you'd see sense." But when Dorothy walked out the door, the keys to her new house jingling in her pocket, it wasn't defeat she carried with her, it was victory. Her first night in her new home was unlike anything she'd felt in years. She brewed tea in her little kitchen, sat on the porch, and listened to the crickets sing. For the first time since Richard's death, she felt safe. Independent. Whole. Still, a part of her grieved. She thought of Marcus, her boy, the one she had sacrificed so much for. Was this truly who he had become? Or was he just too weak, too spineless, to stand against Ashley's greed? The questions hurt more than any insult. But then came the knock. It was late, nearly midnight, when Dorothy heard the pounding at her door. Her heart raced as she peeked through the window. There stood Marcus, shoulders hunched, eyes red, desperation etched across his face. "Mom," he whispered when she opened the door. "Please. You have to come back. Ashley's furious. She says if you don't give her what you're hiding, she'll make sure you never see the kids again." Dorothy's stomach twisted, but her voice stayed steady. "Marcus, I will not be blackmailed in my own family. If Ashley wants to cut me out of my grandchildren's lives, that's on her. But I won't give her what she's demanding. Not now, not ever." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. "I don't know what to do, Mom. She won't stop. She says this isn't over." Dorothy placed a hand on his arm. "Then let it not be over. But you need to ask yourself, Marcus, when this ends, which side of history do you want to be on? The side of greed and cruelty, or the side of your mother, who has only ever loved you?" He had no answer. He left as quietly as he came, leaving Dorothy on the porch, staring into the night sky, her heart heavy yet unyielding. She didn't know what storm was coming next. But one thing was certain, she was ready for it. The next few weeks were strangely calm. Dorothy settled into her new home, planting flowers in the garden, rearranging furniture, rediscovering the rhythm of living for herself. Every corner of the little house became infused with her spirit, a sanctuary built not from wealth or grandeur, but from peace of mind. But beneath the calm, tension brewed at Marcus and Ashley's house. Ashley's frustration grew into rage. Without Dorothy's presence to dominate, she had no outlet for her venom except Marcus himself. She began snapping at him constantly, picking apart every small mistake, blaming him for everything that went wrong. One evening, Dorothy's phone rang. It was Marcus. His voice was tight, urgent. "Mom, something's happening. Ashley found out about your house. She's furious. She says you betrayed us, that you've been hiding money. She won't stop talking about it." Dorothy listened in silence, then said softly, "Marcus, I didn't betray you. I saved myself. And deep down, you know it. There was no answer, just the faint sound of his labored breathing. Then the line went dead. The following day, Dorothy received an unexpected visitor. A well-dressed man in his 50s appeared at her door, carrying a leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Mr. Lawrence, an attorney who had managed some of Richard's old estate affairs. "Mrs. Green," he began, "I thought you should know. Your daughter-in-law has been making inquiries, aggressive ones, about your financial situation. She even contacted my office, demanding access to documents she has no legal right to see. I wanted to warn you. She's pushing hard." Dorothy thanked him, her chest tightening. It wasn't enough for Ashley to have her home, now she wanted everything. But Dorothy refused to be cornered. Later that week, Ashley herself showed up unannounced at Dorothy's doorstep. She didn't knock politely, she pounded, her voice shrill. "Open up! I know you're in there." Dorothy opened the door calmly, standing tall in the doorway. Ashley's eyes darted past her, scanning the cozy living room, the tidy kitchen, the warmth of a life rebuilt. "So this is it," Ashley sneered. "Your little secret hideout. Did you think you could just run away and leave us with nothing? You're sitting on resources that belong to this family, and I won't let you keep them." Dorothy's voice was firm, her gaze steady. "Ashley, nothing here belongs to you. What I built is mine. What Richard left is legally protected. You have no claim, no right, and certainly no permission to bully me." Ashley's face twisted with rage. "You selfish old woman. You think you're better than me? You think you can just cut me out? I'm carrying your grandchildren. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" Dorothy's reply was calm, almost sorrowful. "It means everything. But I will not trade my dignity for your approval." Ashley stepped closer, her voice dropping into a venomous whisper. "If you don't hand it over, you'll regret it. I'll make sure Marcus turns his back on you forever. I'll make sure the kids forget you even exist." For a brief moment, Dorothy's composure faltered, her heart ached at the thought of losing her grandchildren. But then she steadied herself. "Ashley, threats only reveal your fear. And right now, you are more afraid of me than I have ever been of you." With that, Dorothy closed the door firmly in Ashley's face. She leaned against the wood, trembling, but also strangely liberated. That night, Marcus called again. His voice was raw. "Mom, Ashley's out of control. She keeps saying you're hiding millions, that you're planning to cut us out of everything. She won't stop." Dorothy took a deep breath. "Marcus, listen to me. The truth is simple. I protected myself. That is all. And I've left enough provisions in place that you and the children will never be without. But Ashley doesn't care about security, she cares about control. If you don't see that now, you may never see it." Marcus broke down, his sobs filling the line. "I don't know what to do, Mom. I feel like I'm losing everything, my marriage, my family, even you." Dorothy's heart ached, but her voice remained gentle. "You are not losing me, Marcus. You are losing the illusion that Ashley built around you. One day, you'll have to choose whether to keep living in that illusion, or to face the truth." Days later, the truth came crashing in. Ashley's schemes, her calls, her visits, everything spiraled into open desperation. In her rage, she confronted Marcus in front of neighbors, screaming accusations about Dorothy's money, waving papers she had no right to. People began to whisper. Questions were raised. Ashley's mask began to slip. For Dorothy, the moment was bittersweet. Vindication was coming, but so was heartbreak. She hadn't wanted her son's life to unravel, she had only wanted to be treated with dignity. Still, as she sat in her quiet house, watching the sunset through the lace curtains, Dorothy felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not just safety, but strength. She was no longer the fragile widow being cornered and dismissed. She was a woman who had survived, who had reclaimed her voice, who had stood her ground against the tide. And deep down, she knew, the final reckoning was near. The unraveling came faster than anyone expected. Ashley's public outbursts turned heads, and soon even her closest friends began distancing themselves. The polished image she had so carefully cultivated, perfect wife, devoted mother, caring daughter-in-law, crumbled under the weight of her obsession with money and control. Marcus tried to hold things together, but it was like watching someone clutch at sand as it slipped through their fingers. He began missing work, distracted by the chaos at home. His colleagues noticed, his boss noticed, and soon the cracks in his professional life matched the fractures in his marriage. One evening, Marcus showed up at Dorothy's door. He looked exhausted, his eyes ringed with dark circles, his clothes wrinkled. For a long moment, he just stood there, saying nothing. Dorothy finally stepped aside and let him in. He sat down heavily on the sofa and buried his face in his hands. "Mom," he whispered, "I think it's over. Ashley's threatening to take the kids and leave if I don't get money from you. She says I've failed her, that I've failed as a husband. I don't even know who I am anymore." Dorothy's heart ached for her son. She wanted to gather him in her arms like she had when he was a boy, to promise that everything would be okay. But she knew this was not a pain she could take away. It was one he had to confront himself. "Marcus," she said gently, "you have not failed. You've been manipulated, controlled, and lied to. But failure would be if you let that define you forever. You still have a choice. You always have." Tears welled in Marcus's eyes. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." Dorothy reached across the table and took his hand. "Then borrow my strength until you find your own." The words seemed to break something open in him. He wept openly, his body shaking with years of pent-up guilt and shame. For the first time in a long time, Dorothy saw the boy she had raised, not the man shackled by someone else's ambitions. A week later, the storm finally broke. Ashley filed for separation, her demands outrageous. She claimed Dorothy owed her money, that she had been promised support, that she was entitled to a portion of Richard's estate. The legal system didn't bend to her fury. Judges dealt in facts, not tantrums. And the facts were simple: Dorothy's property was her own, her finances were secured, and Ashley had no claim. The court battle exposed Ashley's true nature. Her lies unraveled under questioning, her venomous words captured in documents and recordings Marcus himself had provided when he finally chose to protect his mother. The community that once admired Ashley now saw her clearly. The whispers became a chorus of judgment, and her carefully constructed facade shattered completely. When the dust settled, Dorothy wasn't celebrating. She sat quietly in her little home, hands folded in her lap. There was no joy in seeing Ashley fall, only relief that the nightmare had ended. But there was also sorrow for the years lost, for the love that had been poisoned, for the son who had been caught in the middle of a storm he hadn't created. Marcus came to her afterward, the children in tow. They were shy at first, uncertain after months of tension and distance. But when little Emily climbed into Dorothy's lap and pressed her cheek against her grandmother's shoulder, the dam broke. Dorothy held her tightly, tears spilling down her face as if washing away the last of the bitterness. Marcus watched, his voice low. "Mom, I don't know how to make this right. I can't undo what happened. I can't erase the way I let her treat you." Dorothy looked at him, her eyes soft. "Then don't try to erase it. Learn from it. Grow from it. That's how you make it right." Life moved on, as it always does. Ashley drifted out of their lives, her presence reduced to the occasional bitter email or legal formality. Marcus slowly rebuilt himself, leaning on his mother not as a child demanding care, but as a man seeking guidance. The children thrived in Dorothy's presence, their laughter filling her home with the kind of music she had once thought she'd lost forever. Dorothy had not just survived, she had reclaimed her dignity, her home, and her voice. She had proven that resilience was not about grand victories, but about quiet endurance, about refusing to be erased. And in doing so, she gave her son and grandchildren a second chance to see what love without conditions truly looked like. As Dorothy sat on her porch one warm evening, the sky painted with streaks of orange and gold, she reflected on the journey. She thought of the nights she had cried herself to sleep, the mornings she had doubted her worth, the days she had felt invisible in her own family. And then she thought of this moment, the peace, the love, the freedom. She realized something profound. Family was not about blood or obligation. It was about choice, about who shows up when the storm rages, about who stays when the masks fall. And though she had lost much, she had also gained something immeasurable, herself. Now, I want to ask you, what would you do if you were in Dorothy's shoes? Would you fight to protect yourself, even if it meant standing against your own children and their spouses? Have you, or someone you love, ever lived through something similar, betrayal, manipulation, or the painful realization that family can wound as much as it can heal? Share your story in the comments below. And tell me, what story should we explore next together? Your voice matters, your story matters, and this community exists because of you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know where you're watching from. Together, we keep these conversations alive, shining a light where silence once lived. Because in the end, Dorothy's story isn't just hers, it belongs to all of us who have ever fought to be seen, to be respected, and to be free.